My name is Jessica Moore, and for 7 long years, I devoted my life to Technover. I wasn't just another employee, I was the heartbeat behind some of the company's most successful projects. From launching AI solutions to expanding market share, my fingerprints were everywhere. I poured in late nights, skipped vacations, and treated this company like it was my own. At 29, I was already a senior developer, respected by my peers and trusted by management. Or so I thought. Everything changed the moment Evelyn Harper walked through those glass doors. She was announced as our new vice president of operations, arriving with a trail of buzzwords and an air of arrogance. From the very first meeting, I knew she was trouble. Evelyn didn't care about the culture we had built or the collaborative spirit we fostered. Instead, she was all about politics, control, and climbing the ladder fast. She immediately began asserting her dominance. She disregarded my suggestions in meetings, took credit for team achievements, and constantly belittled those who didn't align with her vision. But I could handle that. I had thick skin. What I couldn't handle was what came next. One afternoon, I presented my latest project, an advanced AI model designed to optimize customer engagement. The model had the potential to revolutionize our strategy and was already showing incredible results in beta testing. Evelyn sat through my presentation with a fake smile plastered across her face. Interesting, she muttered as if she had better things to do. Days later, she held a company-wide meeting. To my shock and disgust, Evelyn unveiled my project word for word as her own. She rebranded it, took full credit, and didn't even mention my name. My heart pounded in my chest as the room erupted in applause for her visionary leadership. I confronted her afterward, demanding an explanation. She brushed me off with a smirk, saying, "Jessica, you should know by now this is how the real world works. Play your cards right next time." I couldn't believe the audacity. But the betrayal didn't end there. Within weeks, Evelyn began systematically freezing me out. She removed me from key meetings, reassigned my responsibilities, and even spread rumors that I was difficult to work with. I went from being the company's rising star to a ghost overnight. My stress levels skyrocketed. I barely slept. I confided in HR, but they were useless. Evelyn had already poisoned the well. Then came the final blow. One Friday evening, I received an email. "Your services are no longer required at Technover," effective immediately. Just like that. I was discarded like yesterday's trash. No severance, no thank you, just cold, calculated termination. I sat there in disbelief, staring at the screen. Rage bubbled up inside me. Evelyn had stolen my work, my dignity, and my career. But what she didn't know was that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. At that moment, I vowed that I would not be a victim. No, I would make Evelyn regret ever crossing me. Revenge wouldn't just be sweet, it would be legendary. The weeks after I was fired felt like being trapped in a nightmare that wouldn't end. Every morning, I woke up hoping it was just a bad dream. But the cold, harsh reality slapped me across the face each time. I had lost everything: my job, my reputation, my sense of purpose. Technover had been more than a company to me, it was my life. I built my identity around my work. For years, my days and nights were spent crafting solutions, driving innovations, and making sure the company stayed ahead in a ruthless, tech-driven market. Yet, in the blink of an eye, Evelyn took it all away as if I was nothing more than a disposable piece in her game of corporate chess. The bitterness seeped into every part of me. I couldn't eat properly, I couldn't sleep, and worst of all, I couldn't stop replaying that humiliating moment when she announced my project as hers in front of the entire company. That smirk on her face haunted me. The applause she received felt like knives stabbing into my chest. No matter how hard I tried to distract myself, everywhere I looked, Evelyn's name was plastered on news articles and press releases. Technover's new visionary leader, Evelyn Harper, ushers in a new era. Each headline felt like salt being poured into my wounds. She was parading around with my work, claiming victories that were rightfully mine. I kept asking myself, how could this happen? How could someone so valuable be rewarded while I, who gave everything to that company, was discarded without a second thought? The rage slowly consumed me. But amid that storm of anger and pain, clarity began to emerge. At first, I only wanted to scream into the void, but as days turned into nights and nights into lonely, sleepless mornings, my emotions evolved. I started asking smarter questions. What did Evelyn not know? What had she overlooked in her mad dash to steal and destroy everything I built? That's when it hit me. The system, the infrastructure, everything Evelyn paraded around as her great success was built by me and my team. Before she ever stepped foot in Technover, I had personally overseen the development of our backend, the core of our AI, and the entire customer database system. As the lead architect, I designed every pathway, every node, every failsafe, and when Evelyn took over, she never bothered to do a full security overhaul. She simply slapped her name on the surface and called it hers. Curious and desperate, I opened my laptop late one night and attempted to log in using my old admin credentials. I half expected them to be revoked, but access granted. The words glowed on the screen like a beacon. I stared, frozen, as the realization sank in. Evelyn had been so focused on public appearances and power plays that she had forgotten about the very thing that kept the company running. She had forgotten about me. My hands trembled with excitement as I navigated through the system. Everything was still there. My AI models, customer data, proprietary codes all untouched. I laughed quietly, the sound foreign and sharp in my empty apartment. Suddenly, I wasn't just Jessica Moore, the fired and forgotten. I was Jessica Moore, the ghost in the machine. But revenge couldn't be rushed. I knew that better than anyone. Evelyn was smart in her own wicked way. And if anything went wrong suddenly, she'd trace it back. No, I needed patience. I needed allies. That's when I remembered my old team. The developers, engineers, and project managers Evelyn had mercilessly pushed out in her quest for domination. Many of them were my close friends. They knew what kind of leader I was and how ruthlessly Evelyn had treated them. I decided to reach out. One by one, I messaged them. At first, I expected bitterness or reluctance. Instead, what I found was shared rage. Each of them carried their own stories of humiliation and injustice, being blamed for relevance, mistakes, being denied bonuses, or simply being told they were replaceable. It didn't take much convincing. Within days, we formed a private group chat, a war room, if you will. Every night, we met virtually, go and over every weakness in Technover's current systems. We compared notes, discussed strategies, and mapped out how Evelyn's reign was balancing on a house of cards. The truth was, she had been reckless in her desire to claim every victory. She had made poor decisions. Security protocols were half done. Patches weren't tested properly, and data backups were inconsistent. Technover was a ticking time bomb, and Evelyn didn't even realize it. But I did, and I planned to be there when it exploded. However, we didn't want total destruction. As tempting as it was to wipe everything clean, that wasn't our goal. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. I didn't want the company to die. I wanted Evelyn to face the consequences of her actions. I wanted the world to see her exposed for the fraud she was. Together, we crafted the perfect silent plan. When the moment came, we would trigger a cascade of errors, not enough to destroy Technover, but just enough to paralyze it. Just enough to cause chaos so severe that the board and investors would have no choice but to hold Evelyn accountable. Our plan was set. We were ready. And deep down, I knew Evelyn had no idea the storm that was about to hit her. Weeks passed as the tension quietly simmered beneath Technova's shiny surface. From the outside, everything seemed flawless. Evelyn continued making headlines, celebrating hollow victories, and rolling out poorly thought-out initiatives. She even hosted a lavish corporate event, toasting to record-breaking growth, while clueless investors clapped like seals. But beneath the facade, the cracks were widening. Behind the scenes, my team and I watched, waited, and prepared. We weren't in a hurry. Timing was everything. We knew that real revenge wasn't served impulsively. It had to be meticulous, precise, devastating. During our secret nightly calls, we shared updates like generals planning a flawless ambush. Oliver, my former senior engineer, monitored the back-end systems daily. Lisa, who once managed customer relations, tracked the growing wave of complaints from frustrated clients. Mark, a cybersecurity expert, identified all the gaps the Evelyn's new hires failed to address. And me, I was the strategist, the one tying all the threads together. I knew Evelyn's biggest weakness was in technical. It was her ego. She believed she was untouchable. She saw herself as a genius, adored and respected. She loved the spotlight and ignored the boring yet vital parts of running a tech empire. That arrogance would be her downfall. We decided to wait until Technova's biggest event of the year, the annual Global Tech Summit. Evelyn had spent months hyping it up. Investors, partners, media outlets, everyone important was set to attend. She was planning to unveil Project Apex, an AI solution she claimed would revolutionize enterprise management. Spoiler alert, Project Apex was a barely modified version of the AI system I built years ago. Typical Evelyn, she took my work, rebranded it, and pretended she was the mastermind. That event would be our stage, our spotlight, the perfect moment to pull the trigger. 2 weeks before the summit, our preparation intensified. We ran simulations, tested fail-safes, and rehearsed our moves down to the second. The plan was genius in its simplicity. We wouldn't hack anything that would be traceable. Instead, we would quietly initiate a chain reaction using the flaws Evelyn's team had left exposed. We would overload the data queues, trigger conflicting AI routines, and flood the system with auto-generated requests, all within normal parameters, no external breach. The result: controlled chaos. Servers would lag, dashboards would crash, and live demonstrations would fail spectacularly in front of the entire industry. Evelyn wouldn't just be embarrassed, she would be exposed. Investors would panic, partners would pull out. The board, always hungry for a scapegoat, would turn on her in seconds. It would be poetic justice. Days before the summit, as I sat in my dark apartment surrounded by empty coffee cups and glowing screens, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and nerves. Part of me questioned whether I was going too far. After all, Technova wasn't just Evelyn. There were good people still working there. Did I really want to burn it all down just to watch Evelyn fall? But then I remembered the look in her eyes when she stole my project, the cruelty in her voice when she fired me, the way she humiliated so many others just to climb higher. No, this wasn't about petty revenge. This was about balance, about proving that actions have consequences, and about taking back what was stolen from me. Finally, the night before the summit arrived, our team gathered virtually one last time. The mood was electric. Everyone knew what was at stake. We reviewed the plan, double-checked every script and trigger, and made sure we were synced perfectly. At exactly 9 a.m. the next day, right as Evelyn stepped onto that grand stage in front of thousands, our silent war would begin. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Tomorrow, everything would change. Evelyn didn't know it yet, but the empire she built on lies and stolen dreams was already crumbling beneath her feet, and I would be the one to pull the final thread. The morning of the tech summit arrived like a storm looming on the horizon. I woke up before sunrise, heart pounding in anticipation. This was it. No more planning, no more waiting. Today was the day Evelyn Harper's empire would fall, and the world would watch it crumble in real time. I brewed a cup of coffee, though I was too anxious to enjoy it, and logged into our team's secure channel. One by one, familiar faces appeared on my screen. Oliver, Lisa, Mark, and the rest of our rogue squad were already locked in and ready. Our plan was synchronized to perfection. But still, there was an undeniable tension hanging in the air. This was more than just a prank. What we were about to do would have real consequences. Careers would be destroyed. A company's reputation would be shattered. Yet none of us hesitated. Evelyn had burned bridges and destroyed lives without remorse. She had earned this. At exactly 8:45 a.m., we initiated phase 1. Everything began subtly. Like a whisper in the digital void, automated scripts that Mark crafted months ago quietly activated redundant AI functions, creating tiny, almost imperceptible inconsistencies across the network. Lisa launched a flood of customer support inquiries through internal portals pre-approved by Evelyn herself for VIP client testing. Oliver manipulated server task priorities to force heavy traffic towards Project Apex's processing nodes. Each action, on its own, was insignificant, nothing illegal, nothing traceable. But together, they were like thousands of tiny needles, stabbing the system from all sides. At precisely 9 o'clock a.m., Evelyn strutted onto the stage. I watched the live stream on my second monitor as she confidently greeted an audience filled with industry giants, reporters, and stakeholders. Welcome to the future of enterprise management, she began, her voice dripping with pride, introducing Project Apex, the AI that will redefine efficiency across the globe. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed, Evelyn soaked in the admiration, like a queen addressing her loyal subjects. My lips curled into a smirk. Let's see how long that smile lasts. She pressed a button to begin her live demonstration. That's when everything started to unravel. The system, already straining under our quiet assault, faltered. At first, it was subtle. The AI response time slowed. Commands lagged. Evelyn, unfazed, kept speaking, hoping no one would notice. Sometimes our servers just need a second to adjust, she joked nervously. But the seconds stretched into minutes. The presentation slides froze mid-transition. Live analytics feeds failed to load. Then came the fatal blow. The Apex interface completely crashed right in front of everyone. A sea of red error messages flooded the screen behind her. System overload. Functionality unavailable. Please contact administrator. The auditorium fell deathly silent. Evelyn's confident smile vanished as she frantically tapped on her tablet, whispering to her assistants. The technical team rushed the stage, their faces pale with panic. Meanwhile, I leaned back in my chair, watching the chaos unfold. It was beautiful. Exactly as we planned, reporters began whispering. Cameras zoomed in on Evelyn's growing discomfort. And social media exploded. Hashtag Apex fail trended within minutes. On stage, Evelyn tried to regain control. This is just a minor technical glitch, she lied through clenched teeth. But the audience wasn't buying it. Investors exchanged concerned glances. Partners checked their phones, already drafting furious emails, and worst of all for Evelyn, the board of directors sitting front and center looked absolutely livid. But the disaster wasn't over. Our plan had one final act. Behind the scenes, Oliver triggered phase 2, a scheduled update approved weeks ago by Evelyn's own team was pushed to the entire network. Designed poorly by her new hires, the update collided with our interference, sending the system into complete meltdown. Not only was Apex offline, but now Technova's entire internal network crushed. Emails, CRM, customer portals, everything went dark. The summit erupted into chaos. Guests began leaving. Reporters hounded Evelyn with brutal questions. Was this project rushed? Is your leadership to blame? What happens to your clients now? Evelyn stood frozen, her carefully crafted facade crumbling by the second. Security eventually escorted her off stage as boos echoed throughout the venue. I couldn't stop smiling. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice served cold and calculated. Within hours, Technova's stock price plummeted. By evening, major clients began pulling contracts. Lawsuits loomed on the horizon, and the board, they wasted no time. That night, an emergency meeting was called. Evelyn Harper was immediately suspended pending investigation for someone who prided herself on controlling every narrative. She now found herself powerless as headlines turned vicious. Technover's empire collapses under Evelyn Harper. Apex disaster exposes leadership failures. I sat in my apartment, watching it all unfold on multiple news feeds. The woman who stole everything from me was now facing public humiliation on a global scale. And I wasn't finished yet. This was just the beginning. Evelyn thought losing Apex was bad. Soon, she would realize the real pain was yet to come. The next 72 hours were unlike anything Technover had ever seen. The company that once prided itself on being the beacon of innovation became the poster child for disaster overnight. Stock analysts called it the biggest corporate blunder of the year. Clients flooded social media with angry posts about outages. Major partners publicly severed ties. Tech blogs tore Evelyn apart, labeling her a fraud and a failure. Every headline seemed to echo the same brutal sentiment. Evelyn Harper's reign was over. Watching all this unfold from the comfort of my small apartment, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and disbelief. It had worked. Our plan born from pain, anger, and betrayal had played out flawlessly. Evelyn had been exposed not just as incompetent, but as the very architect of Technova's collapse. Still, I knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. Destroying her public image and ruining her career was satisfying. But it wasn't enough. Evelyn didn't just take my job or steal my work. She tried to erase me. She tried to make the world forget that Jessica Moore ever existed. That wasn't something I could forgive. And so, while Evelyn scrambled to salvage what little power she had left, I prepared the final phase of my revenge. And like the chaos of the summit, this part would be quiet, personal, devastating in a way Evelyn wouldn't see coming. First, I reached out to my old contacts at Technova, people who still respected me and were disgusted by what Evelyn had done. They were more than eager to help. Through them, I got my hands on internal documents, emails, and meeting recordings. What I found was gold. Evelyn had done more than just steal my project. She had actively sabotaged others, lied to investors, and manipulated reports to make herself look good. There were emails where she mock laid off employees, joked about cutting corners on Apex to save money, and even pressured HR to fabricate reasons for firing longtime staff. These weren't just unethical, they were potentially criminal. With every file I uncovered, the case against Evelyn grew stronger. But I wasn't about to hand it to the authorities just yet, no. That would be too easy. I wanted the world to see her for who she really was. I compiled everything into a comprehensive, undeniable dossier. Then I reached out to one of the most notorious tech journalists in the industry, someone known for exposing corporate corruption. It didn't take much convincing. When I shared the evidence, he immediately knew he had the story of the year. "You're about to destroy her," he said during our final call. "Good," I replied coldly. "She destroyed lives. It's time for hers to crumble." A week later, the article dropped like a bomb. The dark truth behind Technova's fall. Exclusive emails reveal Evelyn Harper's reign of lies and abuse. The expose was brutal and left no stone unturned. It detailed every lie, every scheme, every cruel decision Evelyn had made. It included direct quotes from emails, testimony from former employees, and even clips from private meetings. Social media exploded again, this time with a new narrative. Evelyn wasn't just incompetent, she was malicious. Sponsors, investors, and even Evelyn's few remaining allies abandoned her instantly. Technova's board acted swiftly. In a public statement, they condemned Evelyn's actions and formally terminated her with cause, stripping her of all severance, bonuses, and stock options. She wasn't just fired, she was financially ruined. Meanwhile, regulatory bodies opened investigations. Rumors swirled about possible charges for fraud and negligence. Evelyn, once the darling of the tech world, became a pariah overnight. Paparazzi caught her leaving her penthouse, looking broken and disheveled, as reporters shouted questions about her future. "Evelyn, do you regret what you did? Will you apologize to those you hurt?" She ignored them, shielding her face. But there was no hiding from the storm she had created, or rather, the storm I had unleashed. As I watched it all from my living room, a deep sense of peace settled over me. I had done it. I didn't just destroy Evelyn's career. I erased her from the narrative she tried so hard to control. Jessica Moore, the woman she once dismissed and discarded, had brought her crushing down. Still, even in my victory, I wasn't entirely heartless. I knew others at Technova were innocent, caught in the crossfire. With Evelyn gone, I reached out to the board quietly. Through mutual contacts, I offered my help. I knew the systems better than anyone. I knew how to rebuild. To my surprise, they responded almost immediately. They were desperate, and I was exactly the lifeline they needed. Negotiations were quick. Within days, I was back at Technova not as a developer or project lead, but as interim chief technology officer. The board knew I was the only person who could save what was left, and I agreed, on one condition: full autonomy to rebuild my way. As Evelyn's name was scrubbed from every corner of the company, mine began to take its place. Jessica Moore wasn't just back, I was running the show now, and as I walked into my new office, overlooking the very floor where I had once been humiliated and cast aside, I couldn't help but smile. Evelyn thought she had buried me. Instead, she planted the seed of her own destruction. Stepping back into Technova felt surreal. Only months earlier, I had left this building in disgrace, my career shattered by Evelyn's cruelty. Now, I was returning not as a defeated employee, but as interim chief technology officer, the savior the board desperately needed. As I walked through the lobby, familiar faces greeted me with cautious optimism. Former colleagues whispered behind their screens, watching me as though I was some mythical figure. Jessica Moore, the woman Evelyn tried to erase, had returned, not only intact, but victorious. I gave them polite nods, but didn't linger. I knew what I had to do. Technova was in ruins. The apex disaster, Evelyn's public downfall, and the mass exodus of clients had left the company teetering on the brink of collapse. Morale was non-existent. Systems were unstable, and trust both internally and externally had been obliterated. The board gave me total control, which was exactly what I demanded. They knew I wasn't interested in playing politics or appeasing shareholders. I made it clear, if they wanted me to fix this mess, I would do it on my terms. That meant tearing down everything Evelyn had built and starting fresh. My first move was simple yet symbolic. I wiped Project Apex from existence. Every trace of Evelyn's pet project was purged from the servers. The team watched in stunned silence as I deleted file after file, erasing her legacy like clearing trash from a cluttered desktop. This company doesn't need shortcuts and stolen ideas. I told my new leadership team, we're going back to fundamentals. We're rebuilding with integrity. They nodded, a spark of hope flickering in their eyes. Over the next several weeks, I worked tirelessly. I reinstated talented employees Evelyn had fired unjustly. I promoted people based on merit, not politics. I brought back engineers, developers, and managers who genuinely cared about the company's mission. Together, we restored stability piece by piece. The back-end infrastructure was repaired, customer portals relaunched smoothly, and internal morale slowly began to recover. But fixing the technical issues was only part of the battle. The real challenge was restoring Technova's reputation. Clients had lost faith. Investors were hesitant. No one trusted us anymore. That's when I decided to do something Evelyn never would have dared admit the truth. I organized a public press conference, streamed live across every major tech platform. Standing at that podium, I wasn't just a tech leader, I was the face of redemption. I won't sugarcoat the past, I began, locking eyes with the sea of reporters. Mistakes were made, trust was broken. Under previous leadership, this company lost its way. The room was dead silent as I continued. But Technova is more than one person's ego. It's built by the dedication of hundreds of brilliant minds who deserve better. And starting today, we're committing to transparency, innovation, and restoring every partnership we lost. I unveil our new initiative, Project Phoenix. Not a rebranded Apex, but a true evolution. Open source collaboration, client inclusive, development, ethical AI principles at the core. The tech community responded almost immediately. Clients cautiously returned. Investors praised the bold, honest approach. For the first time in months, Technova's stock began to climb again. Internally, a transformation occurred as well. Employees who had lived in fear under Evelyn began to thrive. Creativity returned. Laughter echoed in hallways that had once felt like prison walls. People didn't just work, they believed. Meanwhile, Evelyn disappeared from the public eye. Entirely, lawsuits piled up against her. Financial penalties drained what little fortune she had left. She tried rebranding herself with consulting gigs and low-tier speaking engagements, but no one cared. Her name became synonymous with failure and fraud. She became a cautionary tale whispered in corporate boardrooms. One evening, while finalizing quarterly reports in my office, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a single handwritten note. "You won," no signature. But I didn't need one. I knew it was from Evelyn. For a moment, I felt something unexpected pity. She was once powerful, arrogant, and touchable. Now, she was reduced to begging for relevance in a world that had moved on without her. But that pity lasted only seconds. She made her bed. She destroyed lives without remorse, including mine. I wasn't cruel, but I wasn't naive either. Evelyn Harper's story ended in disgrace. Mine was just beginning. As I looked around my office, my name now embossed on the door, I smiled. Not with vengeance, but with pride. I had done more than destroy my enemy. I had rebuilt from the ashes. I turned pain into power, betrayal into opportunity. Jessica Moore wasn't just back. I was stronger, smarter, and more respected than ever before. I became the leader Evelyn could never be, and Technova, it thrived. Not as her kingdom, but as my legacy. 6 months later, Technova was unrecognizable. Gone were the days of chaos and fear. The toxic culture Evelyn Harper cultivated had been purged. In its place stood a company reborn through honesty, resilience, and vision. Under my leadership, Technova not only recovered its sword, Project Phoenix had become an industry standard, praised worldwide for its transparency and effectiveness. Former clients returned in droves, while new partners lined up, eager to work with a company that now symbolized integrity. Internally, the changes were even more profound. Employees no longer whispered in hushed tones or walked on eggshells. They spoke freely, shared ideas, and felt safe. Promotions were fair. Success was celebrated. Mistakes were treated as opportunities to grow, not reasons to punish. I could see it in their eyes every day, the trust they had in me, in each other, and in the company we rebuilt together. I spent countless nights in my office, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Watching this transformation unfold wasn't just rewarding, it was healing. I had turned the battlefield Evelyn left behind into a thriving garden. One evening, after wrapping up a strategy session, I found myself alone, staring out of the massive glass windows of my office. The city lights twinkled below, a reflection of how far I had come. For the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. No anger, no bitterness, just quiet fulfillment. My phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a news alert. Former Technova executive Evelyn Harper declared bankrupt. Lawsuit settlements leave her penniless. I read the headline without emotion. There was no satisfaction left to squeeze from her downfall. Evelyn was gone from the industry, forgotten and disgraced. She had been her own undoing. My revenge had been delivered. But the sweetest part wasn't her collapse, it was my rise. Revenge, I realized, was never about watching someone suffer. Not really. True revenge was proving they could never destroy you, that their attempts to break you only made you stronger. That's what I had done. Evelyn thought she could erase me. Instead, I became everything she pretended to be and more. Weeks later, during a company-wide celebration, I stood before my team, looking out at hundreds of faces filled with joy and pride. I felt overwhelmed. 6 months ago, we were lost, I began, my voice steady. But today, look around. Look at what we've built together. The room erupted in cheers, but I wasn't done. Evelyn Harper may have tried to destroy us, I continued, my tone sharper now. But she failed, because no matter how hard she tried to silence us, people with heart, talent, and integrity always rise. My words resonated deeply. People clap not just for me, but for themselves, for surviving, rebuilding, and thriving. Later that night, as the celebration wound down, I stayed back alone in my office, reflecting. There was no more war to fight, no more enemies to crush. The chapter of revenge had closed, and a new one had begun. I wasn't just the woman who defeated Evelyn Harper anymore. I was Jessica Moore, the leader who turned a broken company into a symbol of redemption. And while the world would eventually forget Evelyn, they would remember me, not because I destroyed someone, but because I rebuilt something greater than ever imagined. That was my legacy, and I wore it like armor as I turned off the lights and prepared to leave for the night. A quiet thought crossed my mind. Revenge brought me back, but purpose is what would keep me here. I smiled softly to myself, whispered goodbye, Evelyn, and walked out not as a woman fueled by vengeance anymore, but as a queen who had already won long ago.